George Lucas once said that movies are never finished. They are just abandoned. People give up on perfecting them because maybe the release date is close or has arrived.
I may have gone too far in a few places.
You see, the first approach I had with a remake or a reimagination in the video game genre happened with my favorite saga of all time,
Resident Evil.
I was always a decent fan of the first Resident Evil, but I always preferred its sequels. But this one, well, this one... This product had two winning factors that, pardon my play on words, won me over very quickly. You see, the first Resident Evil at this point was definitely the one that I hated the most. With this remake, Mikami's team showed what more experience and years could do to this type of game, but also showed to all players how much more the developers still had room to improve, maintaining the original structure and concept of the title. Now, I want to trace a similar parallel to the book The Stand from Stephen King, a favorite of mine and many of King's fans. You see, years after its original publication in 1990, King wanted to re-release a longer version of the book, and he did. This was apparently the real way the book was meant to come out in the first place. This version had also altered some of the plot minor detail. Some character would do different things in different moments, but in the end the story would be pretty much the same. How come nobody complained about the extra pages? Just like nobody complained about Mikami's changes in the remake. Well, we have to consider, the two operas are made by the same hands who made the original, and any changes to it are not only in line with the original vision, but fully respect it and represent the intent to deliver the same kind of product they had delivered years ago, but improved. Everybody loves Resident Evil, as much as they love the re-release of The Stand. I for one love both. But this is but a tiny example of what could go right. In fact, I am kinda forcing my narrative to suit the story that I'm about to tell. We will get back to King and Resident Evil in a little bit, don't worry. For now, let's take, for example, another very famous remake generally appreciated, Black Mesa. Black Mesa is the unofficial remake of the very first Half-Life video game. It is not an understatement if I say that Half-Life might be the most important video game ever released on Windows. I say this not only since it was a critical and commercial success back in 1998, but because the game opened a new window in future Windows game developing, and it created/popularized the concept of mods and spawned a lot of sequels, some of which never saw the light of day, unfortunately. Black Mesa is the passion-driven, enamored and fully professional attempt from a fan-based company to recreate the first original game with a bunch of new tools and tech that 2020 and 2012 had. The task of Crowbar Collective wasn't simply hard, it was almost suicidal. Just know this, just understand the amount of stress the developers could have had upon their shoulders. During its development, Valve published a news update on Steam, we're talking about 2007, saying that, and I quote, "We are as eager to play Black Mesa here as everyone else." So how well did it go? Well, Dario Casali, level designer for all the Half-Life video games, Alex included, had this to say. So why was the game so universally loved even by Valve itself? Well, the answer is simple, as often overlooked maybe. It is impossible to rekindle the same spirits and passion that created Half-Life over 30 years ago. Game developing is different, culture is different, people are different. But one thing you could do is try not to strive off too much from the original. This, and I'm talking about a remake, is not the place to show your originality. If people wanted something original, they weren't gonna buy a remake. When making a remake, I firmly believe that the words, "my game," should be further away from you as possible. This game should be for the community. This game should be for the world. This game should be your thanks to the original developers. Don't forget, remakes are at least 50% fan service.
高松さんどうですか？アートディレクターとして今回
いろんなオリジナルのレビューとかユーザーさんの意見とかすごいネットとかね、その意見がすごい残ってる。それすごい読んだ。もちろんスタッフで作ってるんだけど、 それ以上になんかいろんな人たちと広く作ってるなっていうのが、やっぱり今回すごい面白いなと思って。
So if I both love these two remakes, why am I making this video? Well, the truth is that I've been spoiled by these video games. My standards are now pretty high, even generally. And for example, I am a good fan of remasters. Now, a remaster basically aims to portray the same identical game that was once released, but in a higher graphical quality. Sometimes with some new ease of life feature and maybe voice acting. Like, for example, Monkey Island 1 and 2 are the perfect example.
But if a woodchuck could chuck a woodchuck some amount of wood, what about a woodchuck chuck? A woodchuck should chuck if a woodchuck could chuck wood, as long as a woodchuck would.
It is the same game, plus there are the original voice actors from all the voice sequel, the same mechanics, same story, and plus you can switch from the old game to the new game graphics at will simply by pressing a button. But apparently these aren't so much in fashion anymore. We don't really see many of these. So what happens when everything that could go wrong goes wrong?
In my restless dreams, I see that town, Silent Hill. You promised you'd take me there again someday.
In 2012, not even a remake, but an HD port of the original Silent Hill 2 and 3 was to be released on New Gen. Now, Konami definitely wanted to make this. The sales of the general Silent Hill saga were getting stale, and it was definitely hoping to recapture the fan base from the most loved original Silent Hills. A review from Destructoid in 2012 opens as it follows. It's been tough, as a Silent Hill fan, watching Konami poison what once was the reigning champion of the survival horror game. Even if you enjoy some of the sequels and spin-offs that have been produced over the years, there's no denying that the credibility and prestige of the series is all but dried up. We still have Silent Hill 2 and Silent Hill 3 though, two of the greatest video games ever made, and the finest pair of horror classic you could hope to play. There's absolutely no way Konami could mess up the simple task of compiling these two fine titles into an HD collection, right? That's what I used to think, anyway. Yikes alert. So what happened? Well, two things went wrong, but I will try to tailor around a unique cause, because of the sake of this video. Number one, Konami didn't have the complete source code of the original Silent Hill games. While working hours upon hours of crunch time, Hijinks Studios not only had to port the old game into the new gen, it also had to fix unfinished and bug builds of the game that Konami was giving them. This meant more time, more money involved, and less attention to details. Number 2, Silent Hill's 2 voice lines were recorded after the mocap of the actors who portrayed the same characters, meaning that their voice matched almost 100% the facial animation, which was very high detailed for the era.
Mary, you know, isn't here. About that.
I'm sorry. The Mary you know isn't here.
Drop your head down. Walking off.
This resulted in two major flaws. The game was shipped probably unfinished, or at least not with the polishing touches the original Silent team could arrange back then. The fog would now no longer be artistically and precisely covering out-of-corner textures and areas. Also, the idea of changing dialogues and reworking the script for a new voiceover had to kind of be thrown away, otherwise lip sync would have been terrible. Add to this that the original voice actors apparently banded together into demanding Konami to be paid in order to release a game with their mocap likenesses and voices, which is... let's not get into it. The voice issues were later fixed by giving the player the chance to play with a newly awkward remade voice acting or to keep the original one, but the damage had already done. So far so that the disc actually was rumored to contain even Silent Hill 4. It only had 2 and 3, and Silent Hill 3 didn't have the same treatment when it comes to voice acting. Could this product have been handled better? I think so, probably yes, but with much more time to spend fixing the game and making it look better and doing the same thing for 3 and you do it for 4 and who knows. The development would have been hell and would have costed perhaps 200% more, and maybe Konami would have remade their money now with a new release on PS4, Xbox One, PS5, Steam, whatever. Konami obviously didn't want to bet on it. It opted for the shortest and easiest route, and fans got a remake? Well, remaster actually. That doesn't both make them or the product any justice. Ultimately, this was the case of many unfortunate events, and I'm not entirely faulting Konami this time. The fact of the matter is that fans are the one who took most of the blow, and greed was a big part of what happened. And also people stealing the original game code, because probably they didn't get paid or something, I don't know.
Well, there I am. Conquer the king. King of all the land. Who'd have thought that? But how did I come to this, I hear you say? And who are those strange fellows that surround my throne? I hear you also say. Well, it's a long story. Come closer, and I'll tell you. It all started yesterday. What a day that was. It's what I call a bad fur day.
Conquer Live and Reloaded is an actual remake this time, which had great promises. Most, if not all, the original cast of creators was involved. There was updated graphics with more over the same plot of one of the most irreverent, funny, well-polished N64 video game, but it ended being remembered mostly for its censored and multiplayer changes which drastically diluted the quality of the online games. The fact that Rare in the end managed to post an uncensored song, censored only in the game, on their website, screams loud that Microsoft wanted to keep grounded the vulgarity in the game in order to appeal to, I don't know, as many mummies as possible.
Hey, Maestro! Don't you think that's a little bit too dramatic?
The game had respected most of the fans by delivering a product that was worthy of the fan base, but Microsoft had dealt a mighty blow to it by forcing maybe some censoring on it. Before we lead into the final example, it's worth stating that while some of the titles we have mentioned succeeded at it or got very close, I cried at the thought that all those remakes could have been actually sequels. Or at least, along with remake, I always think they should re-release on modern marketplaces the old game with the old graphics to be enjoyed. This would first of all defeat emulation. Conquer, for example, had even included the old game on the Xbox release. But if a Steam user would want to play that, or maybe a Steam user would love to play the original Resident Evil 1, he would have to look at emulation, legal as much as easy to perform for some. I firmly believe that the moment remakes died for me was April 3rd, 2020, just 2 days off from April Fool's Day. But first, to better understand what happened, we have to talk about the GameCube Resident Evil that came out and its successes. Obviously, Nintendo wanted to port some of its most successful saga on its newly money-printing console, the Nintendo Wii. After the poor sales of the GameCube, everyone had a Wii. So some Resident Evil got made, other masterfully ported on the Wii, with some not so minor graphical improvement. This way, less popular games people didn't have the fortune to play, like Resident Evil 0 and Resident Evil 1, received a new wave of players to buy them, and the sales hit the right spot. So much so that these two titles got their own port on the vastest game market ever, Steam. Here once again the sales blew, so much so that
どうもレジデントイービルファンの皆さんこんにちは。リメイクプロジェクト開発決定いたしました。ありがとうございます。 もう本当言葉通り We do it やりますよ。
For reason unknown, the easiest route, I think easiest, of re-releasing Code Veronica 2 on Steam was not pursued. Instead, Capcom decided to use its newly developed asset, the RE engine, to create something quick and effective. You see, engines usually are what takes the most into the game developing time. This also followed the success of RE7, which was already advertised as a back to the horror roots kind of title. So this was the plan. Remake from the ground up Resident Evil 2 using the already consolidated engine and absolutely winning over its fan over rekindling once again the spirit of back to the roots, back to the horror roots or whatever, and prepared the terrain for a future Resident Evil 8 maybe? We got a very gory teaser during E3 2018.
Get off of me!
And it was okay. It was okay if the game had over-the-shoulder camera a la RE4. Many people actually believe that fixed camera were a feature to be unlocked, or maybe you could disable it at any moment. We knew later this was not the case, since while heavily tested on, the developers ultimately decided to ditch fixed camera angles and focus on the fighting over the shoulder.
途中から入ったけど、入った段階では固定カメラあったよね。あれ、ありましたね。なんかいろいろあって、今の形になったと思うけど、ディレクターとか。
最初は両方いつでも切り替えられるみたいな構想があったんですけど、なんすかね。難しいな言い方が。
ビハインドで実際作ってみたら、まあそうだね。必要なくなったっていうか、
固定カメラも1個の売りとして考えてたけど、結局他の出来が良かったんで、もうこれはいらなくても大丈夫だなっていうのが一番大きな。
十分ビハインドで表現できたんですよね。原作を一時期試しましたね。ゾンビに掴まれてカメラ変わって噛まれるあれを見せたいっていうのでやったんですけど、あれと固定カメラの相性がまた悪かったですね。固定からカメラ切り替わってあれになって戻るとかっていうのはすごい良くなかったんですよね。
一時期 FPS も試したんですよね。
構えたら主観になる。
To work on this title was the main RE team, the same guys as Moreover, who delivered RE7, and all the world seemed to love the hype, me included. Once we had hands on the title, we could already spot some questionable choices. Without delving too much into a fully fledged review, I will tell you the pros and the cons of this operation. After years of suplex, somersault, boulder punch, whatever, it was definitely a breath of fresh air to wander narrow corridors in the dark and feeling stalked with few ammo. I personally played my first playthrough in hardcore, the only difficulty faithful enough to disable autosaves completely and force you to save with increments, which are limited. A shame not to have this feature into the normal game, but it never felt once poorly developed. Also, in regard of the hardcore campaign, the game managed to be hard, sure, challenging, but not broken or frustrating. It was actually able to balance the feeling of, oh my god, I'm out of ammo, and oh, well, that shotgun was worth it, perfectly. The goal was 10 out of 10. The game felt smooth, and most of what we'd seen on the first playthrough was treating the original source material very professionally and with respect. Every new addition was completely in line with the game. Even not having Crimson could be okay, even having Mr. X on the first playthrough could be okay. Although one starts to wonder how much did the developers learn from the success of RE on Steam, and how much did they wanted to have their own creativity on this product. It came as a deafening shout to realize the game, while featuring Mr. X from the beginning, had little to no change on a B scenario, and would actually be impossible to have a proper zigzag experience playing the famous 4 actual campaigns. I'm sure knowing that the engine was already there, Capcom gave to this talented team not enough time to fully realize a full-fledged zigzag campaign. Even though the game ultimately didn't borrow or seem to learn anything from what made a success out of Resident Evil 2 sold way more than high. The game was well praised, loved, and well, it wasn't broken on day one. Now, at this point, very few hints were there, but people demanded it with great strength. And some might actually argue that Resident Evil 8 would need to happen first, but sooner or later, it would be Nemesis' time to shine on the new engine and hardware. Nemesis, who had been so mistreated in movies, games, voice acting, would now sure have its time to shine with talented but young developers. Moreover, having seen the procedural role of Mr. X in RE2 Remake, we could only imagine what Nemesis would be capable to do in the streets of the OG Raccoon City. For reference, Mr. X's role was highly advanced, almost for him to become a Nemesis kind of enemy. While the original would simply stalk you in one room, here he seemed to definitely be interested into stealing Nemesis' job. So what could old Nemi do to upscale the game? I was already imagining him maybe following you on a different and vertical level, maybe further complicating your escape, and it turned out you didn't need much more waiting to find out. December 13, 2019, Capcom decided to remind us of two things. RE3 development was still going strong, with release set to be worrisome close to the first game's release on April 3rd, 2020, and a demo that reminded us, or well, reminded those who didn't play it, that Resident Evil 2 was still available. The demo titled Stars Demo would briefly show us some of Leon's first experience in the police building, while hiding a corny, juicy secret tear. See, up to this point, personally, my biggest concern was Nemesis' voice acting. I know, what a fool. Never, after the original title, had anybody managed to recreate the charm of the original sound.
Stars. Stars. Stars.
What?
Stars.
The OG voice actor had sadly passed away at merely 63 years in 2017. Wait, was he the same guy who played Dario? An Italian? What the are you March 19, 2020, weeks before its release, Capcom felt confident enough to release a new demo. This time the demo was called Raccoon City Demo. It would bring us right into the city with Jill to test Resident Evil 3's very own gameplay. And what a demo it was. What a great demo it was. When I was 27, I played that demo. In line not only with the RE2 remake, but the original game, while short, this demo showed us some very important things. Backtracking, just like the original. Nemesis, he was stalking you in the streets, just like the original. But most important, puzzle solving. There were concerns, of course. Nemesis could now do more than simply chasing us. He could actually turn zombies into infected zombies, or special zombies. But this would make sense in regards of, we're talking about this earlier, scaling up the challenge, making Nemesis much more clever or strong. It wasn't really that much more stronger though. We could blame this on a demo of a known yet finished product, or barely the constraint of this level. But most things we wanted were there anyway, so who cared? Besides, the game landed with a multiplayer component, said not to have stolen any time from the actual game development. People quickly braced out for, an Outbreak style game revealed, but it turned out to be more actually a Dead by Daylight clone. Demo didn't make it fun or playable for what I could test, so didn't matter. With this demo and this hype, anybody had bought a copy of the game on day one. Yours truly as well. When I booted the game, I instantly picked the hardest difficulty, realizing soon that I was robbed of the chance to save my own game and forego any of the autosaves.
2リメイクやってびっくりしたのがこの武骨な難易度。あれはもう門井さんのこだわりですよ。この時代にあの難易度を持ってくるっていうのは すげえことやるなって思いました。ちょっと頭おかしいなたまねえたまねえって言ってるけど、それは別にゲームに対する不満じゃなくて、むしろなんか多分どっかで快感を感じてる。あのギリギリの中でやりきり、僕こうされてるのはいいでしょうけど、やりくりしてるのがもう本当にこうサバイバルホラーのあるべき姿だなっていうふうに思いました。
なんか緊張感の出方って普遍的じゃない？なんか時代関係ないっていうか、あれがあるから昔やったお客さんもうわっそうだったっていうのもあるし、新しい人には逆にこんな武骨なゲーム今時ないじゃん。すげえ新鮮だろうなって。
さすがにね、ハードコアはちょっとやる気。
でもね、あの調整ができる人はカプコンでももう本当数えるほどもいなくて、数えじゃなかったらあのプレイの幅は作れなかったと思うんですよ。
The game was clustered with cutscenes, lengthy walking, radio speaking moments. What we wanted to see transpiring on the game was dealt sardonically via cutscenes or cutscenes with QTE. The game ended up obtaining a mixed result, but none too negative. Capcom stated that the game was being developed alongside RE2 Remake. It had resorted to a B team instead of the original RE team, but the quality, it assured us, had never been off. Multiplayer or single player, both. Sorry, I can't just lie to you. It doesn't take much more than 30 minutes of gameplay to find out almost no backtracking, almost no Nemesis stalking you, very little puzzle solving. It turns out that most of Nemesis' encounter are heavily scripted or on rails. I'm using the word most or almost since the demo technically didn't lie to us. What it showed us though was a very unique 5 minutes containing the only exception to the lacks of the two discussed items. Editor notes here, maybe I'm phrasing this too harshly or too kind of weirdly. The demo lied. These 5 minutes are in the actual game, but are 5 minutes out of 3-6 hours, depends, of the whole game. So yeah, there is backtracking, yeah, there is Nemesis talking, but it's only this. Okay, you can resume Mick from same Mick actually.
Come on, you creepy ass stalker. You want stars? I'll give you stars.
Even Nemesis fight in the hardest difficulty are just requiring a couple of grenades. There's almost no threat coming from him. Most of Nemesis' attacks are Crash Bandicoot inspired running away sections, and as soon as the game has the occasion, transforms Nemesis into a 4-legged dog, making him definitely way less threatening. The completely linear game gives us less location than the original and ditches the choice system. The hardcore difficulty, so nicely challenging in the previous title, had become an unbalanced Dark Souls fest. Sections are devoid of charm and logic, and plot and characters are barely touched. Overall, gifting us of a much more inferior product, not only than the original RE3, but also than RE2 remake and any RE media ever. In my humble opinion, while the second remake seemed to not want to learn from the old grandpa that brought it alive, this chapter seemed not even to be able to. I am sure there will be much more than one person to blame, and I don't think this B team was ready to receive such a delicate job while leaving the RE team working on RE8. Doing so, Capcom not only robbed fans of their game, it robbed them of something more important: trust and hope. Imagine now a dystopian future or an alternate universe in which it wasn't king to rewrite and add pages to the stand. Or imagine a rewriting of Shining made by J.K. Rowling. The whole book world would be in a uproar right now. Instead, when we talk games, movies or TV shows, we seem to cheer at the fact that different people are giving a completely different take on a story that they had no part in without ever even tributing the original efforts. Resident Evil 3 is my favorite game. Like many of my age, I could play it and watch it with my older brother, creating a bonding experience over him with video games. I have the fondest memory of me and Dada, our beaten PS1 controller, and him escaping the Nemesis. I had put so much love and hope in this remake. I actually intended to recapture, remake maybe, some of those feelings. Instead, it crushed my heart. It was also the first time I almost had a panic attack over streaming a game, unable to make it against the unfairly unbalanced, challenging last boss. I felt violated and robbed of my gamer card. In the end, to see she's not even ginger, characterized as much as a shoe, taking a gigantic laser cannon and shoving into what could barely call this point Nemesis and killing him without the beautiful one-liner that forever scorched our childhood, meant for me the end of remakes. This was, in my very humble and personal opinion, the day that remakes died. Thank you for watching.
You want stars? I'll give you stars.
Next time, take the fucking hits!